Yeah, I guess we're all here. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the LPEA June Finance and Audit Committee meeting being called to order. Uh, all members are here. So we would want to have a motion to approve the agenda for this morning. Or maybe somebody could give me that motion, please.
So
I can
moved.
move. Or I'll
Okay,
second.
we got a motion and a second. And is there any changes or requests for changes?
Yeah, Tim, one thing I wanted to mention as we approve the agenda is that we do, as of last night, got some new information about the transmission cost profile. And Greg House from our staff put together some more details on that. We'd be very happy to share it with the committee. We just got it assembled. But it would need to be an executive session because it relates to an active piece of litigation, which Graham can explain if needed. But that was one thing I wanted to offer up. If the committee wants to see that today, we would want to put that in executive session.
Yeah, that rate is currently pending in front of FERC and is in settlement judge posture, docket number ER 26 1150.
For those of you going to the FERC website tonight.
I'm going to go there in a minute. So this would be a separate item to add to executive session.
Yep.
Okay. And that item, what would you call that?
I'd just say a transmission cost discussion should, I think, describe it well.
All right. So, Kohler, you're willing to modify your motion to allow that?
Yes.
Okay. Dusty, you okay? All right. So all in favor of approving the agenda with that addition of the transmission cost adjustment in the executive session? Raise your hand and say aye.
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 All right. Passes unanimously. Okay. And the next is the approval of the May 14th FAC meeting minutes. Just before we came into the Zoom here to the meeting, I had caught an item that I thought needed change. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to read that email, but essentially Chris was listed as LPA staff in the minutes, and he is actually a member of the committee. So I suggested we move his name from LPA staff to committee member for the accuracy. That was the change. So with that change, is there a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Kohler and Dusty, thank you very much. Any other suggestions or changes? No?
No, but I do have a question.
Sure.
I didn't see your email, and it seems like I'm having issues with the LPA emails. Is there an issue with the internal emails?
No, and Tim, it looked like maybe you sent that to staff rather than including.
Yeah, it was sent. I get the minutes beforehand from Jessica, and there's like Chris and Graham and somebody else is on copy, maybe Janelle. And so I just replied back to that. So it did not include the members of the committee.
I just forwarded it to Director Mars and McGinnis, so you have it.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I was trying to get it out in a hurry. So, any other questions on that change or anything? Or any other changes or comments? Doesn't look like it. All right. Well, all in favor then raise your hand and say aye.
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 Bye.
Another unanimous. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the April draft financials and adjustments. Typically, we'd reviewed the 2 months prior, and now with April and the new billing from SPP, it becomes even more important. So I'm going to hand this over to Monica as the acting CFO and let you illuminate us.
Great. Great.
keep our
Thank
lights on.
you. Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
It's a little small.
Okay. So I'm actually I added a worksheet in Google Docs that's tracking kind of our statement or our changes from month to month in this new power requirement, knowing that the financials continue to be preliminary. So I want to go ahead and maybe review that first. There wasn't any other changes to kind of that midsection of our general O&M operating and maintenance expenses or any other costs to electric services. So the expenses highlighted on this spreadsheet are really the changes that I wanted to highlight with the committee today. I do also want to make a statement that these continue to be preliminary statements, and these April financials are not finalized. In addition to this document, I added another document in the Google Docs that is a billing calendar, which highlights all of the dates of when we'll receive final billing on the various settlements. And so you'll notice the S-120 settlement for April won't be available until September 10th, meaning that we will not have finalized financials until October FAC. But with all that being said, we did receive some new information from our last meeting regarding some cost of power and transmission expenses, and again is highlighted in the statement of change worksheet. Our operating margins went from a negative 100,000 to a negative 590,000. So although this increased our overall expenses by 490,000, we're still 325,000 better than budget. The decrease in margins is mainly attributed to the transmission expense, which was now 147,000 over budget. April was the first month of us purchasing services or transmission services from SPP. So we took our best guess on making estimates based on Tri-State's filed open access transmission tariff rate, and we multiplied that by our gross load for the month. And so on June 1st, we received our April invoice from SPP. And so that is what is reflected in this restatement. That invoice, based on our zone, the annual transmission revenue requirement is larger than we anticipated, and again, increased our expense. We're still working on getting detailed information on calculations and kind of working through that. And then as Chris noted, Greg Howes put together a summary of some additional details on the transmission expense that we can review further in executive session. Couple other highlights regarding the transmission expense, because the expense did come in higher than originally budgeted. We were able to take advantage of the full transmission credit. Last month, when we were reviewing the Tri-State transmission credit, we were anticipating maybe having to lose a portion of that. Also related to that transmission credit, kind of working through some details with Tri-State. it was discovered that our original transmission credit, or our transmission credit, has actually decreased from what we originally thought based on the year of the Form 1 data that's used to calculate that credit. Again, we're still kind of working through some details and going back and forth with Tri-State, but as it stands right now with the current presentation of financials for April and May, we're using this last assumption from Tri-State, which now it actually decreases our transmission credit in whole by about 4.5 million. Just as a summary, or just to give a little bit more background on that, initially we were using 2021 Form 1 data to calculate the credit. And again, based on the review with the Tri-State team, when we went to request the credit for April, they identified that based on the notice, on the date of our notice of withdrawal, we needed to be using the 2022 Form 1 information. So,
Yeah, and I might speak to that for just a second too. So as some of you might be aware, Tri-State has had about 8 subsequent compliance filings where they've had to regenerate the numbers. I think we've discussed this a lot, where Tri-State would generate compliance filing numbers. FERC would say, go back and do it again, do it again, do it again. And the 8th compliance filing was what was largely adopted by the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals a couple months ago. That came out in September of 2025. But other than the very first compliance filing, Tri-State was only updating. The numbers get weird to track, but the 2022 form, right, which is what United was departing under, because United was sort of the primary opposition litigant, and they weren't updating the next year, which is what LPEA was under. So when we would get these updated filings, they were for United's departure year, not our departure year. And Monica and I both run this through the FERC rate 281 calculation against the operative FERC Form 1 at the time. And our numbers are slightly different than what Tri-State's getting, but in general, they're pretty close to where this is. We just have some minor discrepancies to figure out.
Questions from anyone? Kohler?
Yeah, I got a little confused on that, Graham. You said a couple minor discrepancies. So that would be on the new Form 1 that we're using instead of the old one, the 2023 instead of 2022? Or are you still referring back to the one we originally started with?
No, the 2023 versus because they didn't fully update the entirety of the worksheet, we have the I'd say the primary discrepancy right now seems to be the percentage allocator, right? All of the FERC Form 1 data that Tri-State has provided lines up with the FERC Form 1 data, and that we would have used independently under that operative FERC Form 1 at the time of our departure. So it's more about what is our percentage allocator. And so we need to really talk to Tri-State about what that discrepancy is. If that makes sense.
Is that reflected in the transmission expense for April?
No, this is just be the credit, right, Monica? I mean, so the expense is what we would need to talk about in an executive session. That's what is being litigated
Right.
Under that FERC action. But the credit is not, we aren't in a litigation posture with Tri-State, and frankly, we're probably close enough that we can kind of sit down and kind of go over each other's math. We can get to the point where we can resolve that between ourselves, I hope.
So,
Okay, and if I understood that right, Monica, you said that that discrepancy on the credit is the whole, for the whole till 2060, correct?
Correct. I can pull up
Okay.
another document that's also in Google Docs. We looked at it last month. It was kind of the breakdown of that transmission expense and how the credit would be applied. And so I can pull up that spreadsheet. And so it's this dollar amount that's changing. It decreased from based on that Form 1 data. So, and
Okay.
so the effect of that changing, it decreases slightly our amortization of that credit, and then decreases again slightly our interest that we're going to be receiving over the 40-year term.
Okay. Thank you. One of these days I'll get it figured out.
yeah,
There's a
appreciate it.
lot of information, so.
And
it's-
Kohler, just to kind of put that in context, essentially using the updated form data from that we needed to update from the 2021 data to the 2022 data because of our announced departure date, it basically results in about 4% less transmission credit at the onset than we thought based on the old information. So if you want to boil it all down, what's actually happening here, we have slightly less transmission credit than we thought to start. However, interest rates are increasing and we're going to get more interest than we saw earlier. So, some fine tuning here, but all of these are kind of these adjustments as we get final information.
Well, the interest rate follows the federal interest rate,
That's
so
correct.
it bounces around?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
or down.
Or down. Yeah.
You're done.
Right now, up.
Yes. So maybe just recap a little bit from my understanding that and there's a question in here as well, which is, so the year of the calculation for our purposes of the transmission credit, that percentage, I assume, is percentage of debt at that time?
Right.
Yes.
There's a detailed calculation.
Yeah,
Sorry, Graham, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. So what you do, right, is that, and I can walk anybody through it that wants to be walked through it, but the rate 281 to calculate transmission credit, you take so Tri-State. Here's the real answer is that Tri-State has to give an annual update April 30th of every year, right? And so when we voted to depart in March, that was before the new annual calculation came out. So we went under the annual calculation that was then in effect. And so
Which was 2022.
which was 2022, yeah,
Even though we voted to depart in 2023.
we voted to depart in 2024. So that's where it gets really sort of interesting, right? Is so the calculation that was in effect from April 30th, 2023 until April 29th, 2024 was based on the 2022 FERC Form 1.
Okay.
And so when United Power and Mountain Parks left, because United Power left in May, so it was, so April 30th, they voted to leave in May. And so they were operating under the 2021 FERC Form 1. And because Mountain Parks voted to leave in February of that same 12-month period between April 30th and April 29th, they were on the same calculation. And so that was the calculation that Tri-State would keep updating, but because we were 13 months later than Mountain Parks, we were on the next cycle. And I can kind of go through, just it's an easy enough calculation to do. There's about 6 pluses there's about 3 pluses and 3 minuses. And one of the minuses changed pretty meaningfully from one FERC form 1 year to the next. And that's what drove the difference in between the number on the 2021 form and the number on the 2022 form.
And that,
Bring up that calculation if you guys want to see it.
before we get in the weeds there, just so different year than we had expected.
I would say so as these slightly, right? As these
Or that we had
compliance
predicted.
filings kept trickling out, right? Like the number would move as FERC would make Tri-State recalculate things. And so Tri-State would republish if you see this green box up here where it says notice year 22, they kept republishing notice.
There's no screen box on our screen.
No green, it's like a little green rectangle.
Yeah.
Notice
Where
year
is-
2022 there, Monica.
I've got it.
Can you see that? It might be kind of small. Yeah, it's probably good to.
I've got it.
Yeah. So each time Tri-State would republish this as notice year 2021 or whatever, based on notice year, probably it gets confusing to track, but I'd say they would republish it as FY 2021 Form 1, and we are under FY 2022 Form 1, which now Monica has added to this sheet. So, you can sort of see the difference in, regulatory liability. You can see that line 5 subtotal additions doesn't change that meaningfully from year to year, but the line 11 subtotal subtractions changes fairly meaningfully from 1 year to the next, and that's part of what drives the difference between this $93 million green box and the $88 million yellow box in the yellow box.
Okay, so before we got in the weeds,
Mhm.
I wanted to just kind of understand the bigger picture a little bit, and change in the basic calculation due to a year that's got recalculated, sounds like. And somewhere along the way, that wasn't taken into account. The net result seems like 4%, 4 million over 90. It's a little more than 4%, 4 plus. Does that get applied evenly across those, what is it, 30 years for that credit?
Yeah, 40.
40 years.
40 years. So that's a fairly nominal change on a yearly, certainly on a monthly basis, right?
That's right. And Tim, to that, the point about interest rates, we're going to see some uptick, I think, in the interest applied to the balance. And so, we want to make sure FAC is up to date. We got the latest information, the latest Form 1, et cetera. And hopefully this is helpful to kind of see how that calculation cascades from that updated Form 1. So, a little bit of downward revision on that total transmission credit, but a relatively small monthly change over the 40 years.
Color, is that?
I think so. I need to absorb it, but yes, I think that helps. A couple months worth, I think we'll be better off and get it figured out.
It's all new.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Just want to make sure there's a lot of complication here. A lot of numbers.
But really, the increase from the original estimate to our actual billing that we received in June, that increase primarily is related to just new information we received on how SPP is calculating our transmission expense. And so the increase isn't really attributed to that transmission credit that we're receiving from Tri-State. So just wanting to
Right. So there is
highlight that again and make that kind of that point.
again, sort of big picture, the transmission costs did increase. We have a slightly smaller credit to apply to it, but the fundamental is that there's an increase in transmission costs that's greater than what we had budgeted, essentially.
It's 147,000 above budget and quite a bit. And again, last month it was a brand new month for us. We hadn't seen how SPP was going to be calculating that transmission expense. And so we took our best guess and made an estimate, which was much lower than what we had budgeted, as well as in addition, lower than what was actually billed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But also I think important to point out the line just above it, which is we are doing better than expected on cost of purchase of the power itself. So moving pieces here, one line a bit above where we thought it was going to be, and cost of purchase or cost of purchasing power is lower than we anticipated. So yeah, lot, as you point out, Tim, a lot of moving parts to our new operating situation, and hopefully this kind of presentation helps the committee see those different pieces.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to understand this as we move along. I think another big picture piece is that this is 1 month. It's a new month. It's a month with a whole new set of parameters. And so it's not a trend yet at this point. 1 month is not a trend. There's some likelihood, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that over a year, the rest of the year, that we're going to see how that trend plays out, and it may come more closely to what we had anticipated. Notwithstanding that forecasts are forecasts. That was data 15 months ago.
Well, that's right. And we were forecasting in a situation where we were 6 months out in a totally new market that we'd never operated in before. So
yeah, I'd like to throw a couple data points on that.
Yeah.
Just to have it up in front of me, right? Generally we're going to talk about strategy in the ER 261150 case in executive session, but I can talk about a couple of public procedural documents. One is that Tri-State didn't file this tariff until January 28th of 2026. So, we had long since set our budget for what we thought our transmission expense was going to be before they, months before they filed this, and FERC didn't issue its preliminary order accepting subject to refund until March 31st, the literal day before the rate went into effect. So, it's our budget was based on Tri-State's operative tariff at the time, and they didn't file this until, a month, 2 months before they joined SPP.
Right. Yeah. I think so far we're doing pretty well considering how much data we had at that time that has changed since. So, Kohler, I don't mean to step on your presentation, Monica, but I see Kohler's hand is up there.
Just a quick question, because you mentioned that you learned kind of how SPP did a little different than what you thought they would. So will we go ahead and then recalculate our forecast going forward to take that into consideration?
Well, Kohler, I think what you'll see,
Or will that...
I think we've got first invoice from SPP, and we still haven't gotten the detailed invoice from SPP. So,
Okay.
we're learning, about new information when we get that bill. And as you'll see in executive session, we'll be able to show some of the detail around the ATRR, which is the piece that is being litigated, and how that influences the costs. And Dan and Greg are working hard to interrogate that, make sure we're being charged the correct amount. And of course, there's some dispute on what that total cost base should be. You'll remember there's a case also with Basin on that front. So yeah, new things happening, new litigation, new parts that feed into this total bill. And so yeah, we'll just keep giving the FAQ and the full board the latest information that we have, and update from there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right,
ahead.
so just a couple other quick highlights on April. As Chris mentioned, transmission was the biggest increase in the change or restatement from last month to this month, but we also received 3 cost of power adjustments, which netted to a credit in our favor. And then there was a small adjustment in the revenue line, also attributed indirectly to the cost of power adjustment, which was passed through as a credit to a member's account. And then again, in executive session, if we wanted to, I've provided more details on the adjustments for specific, sources of the adjustments in this information below. The cells are hidden right now for public session, but if we wanted to take a quick look at executive, we can go ahead and do that. And then lastly, I added this line loss calculation. We had touched on this in April, that our line loss was relatively low on our original preliminary financials at a 1.7. Normally, we would expect it to be anywhere between 3.5% to 5%, just as a baseline. And so with the adjustments that we've seen thus far, that increased our line loss to 4.97%. So, that's a good indicator. We believe that that cost of power transmission expense should kind of stay in line. Or actually, excuse me, I wouldn't expect this transmission expense to adjust at all, but it would be that cost of power that we may see additional adjustments again through September 10th with the way SPP does their 53 and 120-day resettlement. So. Is there any other questions on April?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a note that this doesn't get finalized based on the timeline you set out till like October, right? So I think it will present some budgeting challenges for 2027 as well, because we will have only a few months of finalized data to look at. I mean, we'll see what those variances are. It may not be a big challenge, but I think we should be prepared to have some latitude in that budget for 2027.
Right. Yeah, and until we see how the restatements or resettlements are working out, I mean, I am seeing daily resettlements under that S53 settlement code. I won't start seeing April's 120-day resettlements for quite some time to see if the main resettlements happen in that 53-day period.
And the magnitude of those? Is it small? Big?
Right now it's showing in our favor right now. And so, but again, that it's based on that real time and day ahead information, as well as some ancillary charges that, because it's all new information, I really can't, tell on if that's
Okay.
a trend or what it's going to look like.
Okay.
Um,
Curious.
and then just real quickly, I'll pull up that calendar just to kind of give you all a quick overview of it. Again, that's in the Google Docs, but this provides a summary of when we expect to receive the billing information on the transmission service, as well as the settlements. So, and then if you're more visual, there's this breakdown on a calendar view as well. But that's where I'm getting that final our April 30th S-120 resettlement will not be available until September 10th. So.
Yeah. Maybe a better way to frame my question is over that period of time, we'll get a sense of what is the magnitude of these things. At the moment, it's really hard to know. And a full year, because these things will change based on seasonality, right? To some degree. So, all right. All right, well, kind of a fun ride. It's like a roller coaster a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, you're exactly right, and I appreciate Monica putting up that calendar of kind of our new world that we're operating in and how it impacts, how the board receives financial information, how we finalize months or finalize our books. We are in a different spot, but I also don't want to, miss the forest through the trees, which is we're seeing significantly lower power costs, and we're able to utilize all of our transmission credit, and that is really helpful for us to be able to stabilize our rates. So I think the big picture is still very positive, but also, of course, want to dig into the details with the FAQ on how some of these different pieces are moving.
Well,
All right. Are you guys ready to move on to the May financials, or are there any other questions on the April?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right. So again, these May financials are in preliminary draft format, with primarily the estimates showing up in our transmission and cost of power.
Can you make that a little larger? Because I don't think that's in the Google Doc, right?
It is not. I got some final revenue information this morning, and so I will upload it later this afternoon, but still kind of finalizing the in-depth review of the information.
Right. And this stays preliminary. So yeah, having it large enough to read in the screen is helpful. Thanks.
Is that good for you all?
It's tolerable for there. That's much better. Thank you.
And Tim, I noticed Zoom added a new feature where you can actually zoom in on Monica's Zoom yourself manually if you ever need to.
Oh, not aware of that one. I'll look for it.
Just stretch it out on your mouse pad or.
Yeah, I just did that a little bit, but
Okay, so
that's good though. I can read that. Thank you.
okay. So LPEA reported a negative operating margin of 121,000 in May compared to a negative budgeted margin of 870,000, which resulted in a positive budget variance of 749,000. Our gross margins were 3% or 162,000 over budget. Our controllable expenses were 13% or 452,000 under budget. And then our other expenses were 5% or 136,000 under budget. Revenue remains to be slightly under budget, 5% under for the month of May or 500,000. Residential was down 2%, large industrial was down 19%, and commercial was down 3%. This lower than expected revenue, as I mentioned last month, continues to impact our year-to-date margins as a percent of revenue. This month, it has dropped under 1%, but that is, I do want to highlight, that is before applying any rate stabilization funds to our current year-to-date figures. I ran a quick calculation. If we were applying that monthly spread of that rate stabilization of approximately, 700,000 each month, our operating margin as a percent of revenue would be sitting at 7.4%. So going back up to cost of power, it is based on at least 3 different sources of estimates right now, but it's coming in 15% under budget or 663,000. Looking again at our line loss, it's showing as a negative, which does indicate that there is possibly some adjustments, or definitely some adjustments that will be coming to light in the next couple weeks. Specifically related, there was some real-time and day-ahead market transactions for May that we're reviewing right now. But again, I think is going to impact that cost of purchase power and increase it. What were we saying, Dan, about 360,000?
That's correct, Monica. If we adjusted so that losses turned out to be in that 4% range, and that would add 5 million kilowatt hours, which would add about that many dollars.
So, but we continue to see savings through most of our operating and maintenance expenses. Transmission expenses, the outlier here being 7% above budget. Again, as we kind of just discussed with our April review, I think that higher expense is going to be a continued trend throughout the remainder of the year. But because the May transmission bill will not be available until, let's see, August 1st. What I used as an estimate was I just flatlined the transmission expense. So I used our actuals from April for this May estimate. But we saw savings in multiple different activities in May due to primarily timing variances. So there were just some projects that are being pushed out into future months. And so I do expect those costs to catch up. And then we still have a few FTE vacancies right now. So our payroll expenses continue to be slightly under budget. And in turn, our health insurance benefit costs were slightly under budget this month. In the other expense section, I wanted to highlight once again, our depreciation and amortization expense is under budget. As I mentioned last month, this under budget expense is primarily related to the new regulatory asset that was over budgeted. And so we're going to be seeing a savings in this line throughout the remainder of the year. The savings is going to be offset by increased interest expense. And again, that's related to a budget variance. When we were initially putting together our 2026 budget, we had an assumption of the sale of an asset and paying down some debt. And so we'll see an increased cost through the remainder of the year on that line. But the two kind of net each other out and actually create a positive budget variance for the year or for the month. And I could foresee that being a trend for the remainder of the year. And then finally, just wanted to highlight on our cash levels. They do remain at a healthy level. We were 3.6 million higher than we were at this time last year. We are slightly under the board's target of 90 days for the operating liquidity, but we are above or meeting that days of cash on hand at 32 days. So, is there any questions?
Monica, just it might be useful maybe for Dan, any information you want to give us on that industrial load. I know we've gotten some updated information back from one of our large customers that might be useful here to put that into context.
Yeah, I'll take that. So in April, we did see some of our load bump back up because some rebound compressors for some of our industrial customers came back online. They moved some of the gas nominations they had at the time, then turned them back off. That wasn't the intention of those customers at the beginning of the year that we based our forecast on, but that is the reality they're facing right now with an anticipated turning much of that load back on in the November timeframe. So I think our industrial budget will remain low until that point or so, but it's largely offset by cost of power reduction with a gross margin impact that is very negligible.
Thanks, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I might have one. The revenue down, was May considered still a warmer than normal month or something different than the normal?
Kohler,
Dan, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I haven't had too much of a chance to dig into the variances on the residential commercial side of things. May is always a weird month. It's sort of a shoulder month, not really a heating month, not a cooling month. So I want to dig into that a little more and try to understand that better.
Okay, thank you.
In the industrial load situation, is that more of a market or an equipment issue?
It's no longer an equipment issue. They have the equipment. It's a lack of having the equipment for such a long time that I think they missed on moving some nominations is where that came out. So I think their next window is going to be in that November timeframe. I guess you could say it's a lingering effect from failure of equipment.
All right. All
All right. Any final questions on the May numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that there is a trend this year um, through 5 months of lower revenue. And that's pretty clear. A lot of it, I think, is weather related. Um, yeah, I don't know what, I mean, there's not much we can do other than observe at this point. But, it, I guess the question is, as we move into looking at the forecast for next year and the budget for next year, how do we adjust accordingly? This has been a trend now for a couple of years. It's kind of frightening.
Yeah, I think, Tim, to that point, the historical weather data is not helpful, is what we're finding. If you look at long-term averages going back 20, 25 years, they don't give you much information that matches the new reality.
Yeah.
What
And
what are your odds of the super El Nino this year or next year?
well, it's on my wish list. I guess maybe the other question is, to what extent is this not weather related? Is there another factor or factors going on? And what is their, how deep is that effect? I mean, load continues to decline, but our local economy doesn't or hasn't so far. I hate to think what happens if we do have a poor economy. Could be pretty. Do we need some boundaries around all this? What if kind of thing? Questions, not necessarily suggestions, but all right. I'll quit my doom scrolling here and go ahead, Monica.
That's all I had for the May financials, unless you all wanted to take a deeper dive on anything or have additional questions.
And also, there's a couple of director attendees that have their hands up. I don't know if you can see that, Tim.
Yeah, I just see them now. All right, let's, I think Brad's got his hand up first, so let's let Brad ask his question.
Yeah, Tim, I think your question is very good. I do think that there's some market forces right now with some of our bigger purchasers of power that could drastically change. And then your question, I think, is really good. What if things turn down? I think it really needs to be something that we need to talk about as a board.
Yeah, I think it's perhaps a modeling issue at some point. So get a feel for that was my thought anyway, was, model a couple of good or bad scenarios. We have a great El Nino or we don't. And
right.
So
well,
in our budget planning, that was my thought.
Right. And as far as some of our bigger purchasers of power, they're really changing their models because a lot of them are shutting in wells right now. Gas is so cheap that it's cheaper for them not to produce gas. So they may change their models drastically.
Right. There's a lot of things going on. So how we model that, look at it.
Yep.
This is kind of an outlier this year. I mean, Dan's been and his staff have been really good in the past at producing forecasts on power that are pretty close to the mark of what we hit. The last winter and then this one, those models have not been as accurate, I think, because of a lot having to do with changing weather. So, but there's other factors. So I don't want to throw any disparaging it around here because that has been really strong in the past. But when the weather changes, I mean, there was no winter. That's hard to recover from. So, in my opinion. The other person that had their hand up was Kirsten, if you're okay, Brad, and go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, thanks. It's just a quick question on the slide I see right now. So operating revenue, when I compare year-to-date actual now to year-to-date 2025, it's not as grim as compared to budget. So Dan, what was in the budget that was not in year-to-date 2025 that made you think we were gonna have more operating revenue?
I'm not try stating that again, or you're
Okay, yeah,
saying the
sorry.
operating revenue for
Um,
2026's
yeah.
budget is lower than 25?
No, I'm looking at year-to-date 2025 actual, which was 49.9, or so 50,000, I mean 50 million. And that's better, not better, that's more in line with what we're seeing now than what our budget, what we budgeted for. So when you were doing the budget last year and
Yeah.
figuring out, okay, well, how much,
Yeah.
what kind of weather are we going to be seeing? What are we going to be, what are our industrials going to be doing? When you're doing that
Mhm.
whole thing, compared to year-to-date 2025, we're not really in that much of a downward huge trend compared to actuals, but we are compared to budgets. And you always are right on track
Mhm.
with your how much power we're going to be selling. So I'm just wondering.
I think that delta, Kirsten, is primarily the industrial.
Okay,
There's a lot of dollars associated with that, but like I said, the impact to gross margins is fairly minor
right.
because of the offsetting cost power expense, of course.
Right.
We did not forecast, there's a certain number of kilowatt per hour or yeah, kilowatt hours per month that we forecast residential and commercial customers to use. And in January, February, we forecast a typical high usage during those months that, as Tim mentioned earlier, didn't really occur, materialize. And March really dinged us well. Now, April, that was a fairly, I'll say, normal temperature month, and we had recovered a bit. But the first 3 months of the year stung for sure.
Yeah, we're just weird. Yeah. Okay. Super. And you had said I heard you say that you hadn't had a chance to get into the residential yet to figure out what this last month. So
Yeah,
I
I
can
want to
be
look at.
patient on that. I'm just noticing this is kind of like what we saw last year. And to Tim's point, it's probably what we're going to be seeing for the
Mhm.
the future weather wise. I don't know about industrials wise.
Yeah,
Like,
I wouldn't say we kicked up. In fact, we actually reduced usage on the residential and commercial side of things from 2025 actuals.
okay.
And that's why I'm attributing most of that to the industrial.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for the answers.
Mhm.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Anyone else? Good questions. Thank you. And the next would be to have a motion to go into the executive session. I believe that's on the agenda next. And we will have 3 items on that agenda. Executive session agenda, and I'll just make the motion then real quick to move into executive session to discuss transmission asset discussion and an update and a power supply update, and also the transmission cost adjustment that was added to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. Second,
Second.
thank you, Kohler. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then we make sure you get your executive session link up, and we'll see you here in a moment on that link. I guess we're back. Thank you. This is Tim Wheeler, LPEA's June Finance and Audit Committee meeting. We returned from executive session. There are no actions coming out of executive session, so we're adjourning the committee meeting. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.